Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're going to go deeper than those flashy headlines and tweets to try and understand this guy, Donald Trump.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how Trump's story is such a perfect example of like this clash between image and reality.
Yeah.
And we're going to use this YouTube video to kind of unpack all that. It's called The Life of Donald Trump: Scandals, Success, and Survival.
Okay.
And it's by this channel, Global Money Talk.
I mean, look, we've got a businessman who built a brand that, screams luxury, right? But he's also faced multiple bankruptcies.
Yeah.
He's a reality TV star who somehow becomes president.
Twice.
Not once, but twice. And let's not forget, he's a guy who, thrives on controversy.
Right.
But somehow keeps this, diehard following. What's the deal here? What is it that drives a man like Donald Trump?
Well, I think to really understand that, you got to go back to the beginning. Trump's early life was anything but ordinary.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking 23 rooms in his childhood home and Queens private school education, chauffeured around in a limousine. Come on.
But he wasn't just some spoiled rich kid, right?
Right.
The video makes it sound like he was kind of a troublemaker.
Oh, yeah.
Pulling girls' hair, disrupting the last.
He even punched his music teacher.
Whoa. Okay, maybe more than just a troublemaker.
Yeah, there was always this rebellious streak in him, always pushing boundaries, even in that world of privilege, And sending him to military school at 13, I think that brings up a really interesting question. Did it actually instill discipline, or did it just reinforce his sense of, hierarchy and power?
Especially with that whole incident where his dad used his influence to protect him.
Right.
When another student got mistreated.
Exactly. It really highlights this pattern that we see throughout his life, using wealth and influence to kind of navigate tough situations. He learned early on that the rules didn't really apply to him.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit to when Trump enters the business world.
Okay.
He's always saying he's a self-made billionaire.
Right.
But we all know the reality is a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I mean, he inherited a lot of wealth.
A lot.
And those family connections definitely helped him out.
Oh, for sure. But I don't think that takes away from his business smarts. That whole Grand Hyatt Hotel story, that's classic Trump.
Yeah, what was it, a 40-year tax exemption from New York City?
40 years, that wasn't just luck.
No, definitely not luck. It takes a certain kind of skill to pull something like that off.
Exactly.
It wasn't just about knowing the loopholes, it was about that art of negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
Leveraging relationships, projecting this image of success. Those were all tools he used so well throughout his career.
Absolutely. And this period is so important because it's where he starts building that public image.
Right.
That bold, ambitious deal maker who kind of bends the rules to get what he wants. That image would become his biggest asset later on.
So then he builds Trump Tower, right? Ventures into casinos, even writes The Art of the Deal.
Which became a huge bestseller.
Yeah, he was building this empire, becoming a symbol of the American dream. Even landed himself on the cover of Time magazine.
It's true. But even then, that image was often more polished than the reality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The 1990s hit the Trump organization pretty hard, pushed it close to bankruptcy.
Wow. I remember hearing about his money troubles back then, but I didn't realize it was that bad.
It was close. The real estate market crashed, and Trump was stuck with all this debt. He had to sell off assets. Went through a very public and messy divorce. It was rough.
It's crazy how he bounced back from all that.
It is.
I guess that never give up attitude is a big part of why his supporters love him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But what's interesting is that all that hardship actually made him more famous.
How so?
Well, he got that cameo in Home Alone 2.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And then the real game changer, The Apprentice.
The Apprentice. That's when he went from businessman to straight-up celebrity?
Exactly.
You're fired. I mean, that became a national catchphrase.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like he was preparing for a career in show business, not politics.
Right. It gave him this platform to connect with millions of Americans who have no idea about his business dealings. He was no longer just a real estate guy. He was a cultural icon.
And somewhere in all of this, those political ambitions start to take root.
Yeah, the video mentions that he was interested in politics way back in 1988.
Really?
Yeah. He even wrote these open letters criticizing America's direction. It's like he had this vision for himself even back then.
Those letters would be interesting to read.
I know, right? They give you a glimpse into his early political thinking. And the crazy thing is the ideas he talked about back then, they became the foundation of his 2016 campaign. It's like he was playing the long game all along.
But you gotta admit, for a lot of people, his political aspirations seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It wasn't until that whole birther controversy in 2012, about President Obama's birthplace.
Right.
That's when he really stepped into the political spotlight. Was that just for publicity, or was there something more to it?
It's hard to say for sure what he was thinking.
Yeah.
But he definitely knew how to get the media's attention, how to create buzz. He learned those skills on The Apprentice and used them perfectly in the political world.
It's like he was testing the waters, seeing how far he could push things.
Yeah, and the response, both good and bad, showed him the power of tapping into a certain segment of the American public. The people who felt ignored or even disrespected by the establishment.
So by the time he announced his candidacy in 2015, it wasn't a total shock.
No, he had spent years building that platform, crafting his image, testing his message.
And that message really resonated with a specific group.
Yeah, white working-class Americans who felt left behind by globalization and disillusioned by traditional politics.
His Make America Great Again slogan, that was brilliant.
It was so simple but so effective.
It captured this nostalgia for a simpler time.
Yeah, when America was seen as stronger, prouder, more prosperous.
He tapped into this deep well of resentment.
Oh yeah, anger towards the establishment, towards the elites.
And he turned that anger into a powerful political movement.
He did?
And man, when he got into office, it was like a non-stop roller coaster.
It really was.
Just one thing after another.
Trump's presidency was a whirlwind. I mean, withdrawing from those trade agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Right.
And then slapping tariffs on China, starting a whole trade war.
Oh yeah, that was a big deal. Affected everyone.
Global implications for sure.
And then there were those summits with Kim Jong-un.
Oh man.
That was wild. Talk about unconventional diplomacy.
Yeah, he definitely did things his own way.
He really did. He was constantly on Twitter, announcing policies, attacking his opponents.
I mean, that was totally unprecedented. No other president had ever done that.
He was a master at using social media to, control the story, bypass the traditional media and talk directly to his base.
It was incredibly effective. He could set the agenda, dominate the news cycle, all with a single tweet.
And while everyone else was criticizing his every move, his supporters loved it. They ate it up.
Yeah, they saw him as like this straight shooter, the ultimate Washington outsider, someone who was finally going to shake things up.
Drain the swamp.
Exactly. But all that disruption came at a price.
Yeah.
His presidency was super polarizing, lots of social unrest.
Yeah, his rhetoric definitely inflamed things. And his policies, super divisive. It felt like the country was being ripped apart.
It really did. And then COVID hit.
Oh man, COVID, that was a whole other level of crazy.
It was a crisis that really tested his leadership like nothing else.
His handling of the pandemic, how do I put this? It was controversial.
To say the least.
He downplayed the virus, promoted unproven treatments. It often felt like he was going against what the health experts were saying.
Yeah, his approach definitely went against the grain, and his resistance to lockdowns and masks, while it appealed to some people who valued freedom and all that,
right,
it also contributed to a much higher death toll here in the U.S. compared to other countries.
It's a tough pill to swallow, Even in a global crisis, politics can have real-world consequences.
For sure. The pandemic really impacted the 2020 election, the economy, the social unrest, the rising death toll. All of it created this sense of unease.
And it definitely hurt him in the polls.
Yeah, and then he lost.
Which was a pretty big deal. I mean, he was the first incumbent president in almost 30 years to lose re-election.
A historical loss, for sure.
But even in defeat, he wouldn't concede.
Nope. He kept saying the election was rigged.
Talking about voter fraud.
Which just poured more fuel on the fire?
Yeah, it was a really tense time. And then came January 6th.
The attack on the Capitol.
A dark day, for sure. I mean, he was impeached for inciting an insurrection.
Second time he was impeached.
Right, but he was acquitted by the Senate.
Again.
Which just goes to show how divided the country was.
Deep partisan divide.
For sure. Even after leaving office, he still had a ton of influence.
Oh, yeah. He was like a shadow president.
Holding rallies, endorsing candidates, spreading his message on social media and through conservative news.
He never really went away.
Nope. And then things took another crazy turn.
Yeah, who would have thought?
The overturning of those election interference charges.
That was a game changer.
Suddenly, he was the victim, not the villain.
It shifted the whole narrative.
And then the Supreme Court ruled in his favor.
Which just made him look even stronger.
It felt like he was on this path to redemption.
And his supporters were loving it.
Oh, yeah. They rallied around him even harder. And then the assassination attempt.
It's crazy how things can change in an instant.
I know. It was shocking. It made him seem like a martyr.
To his followers, at least.
It's incredible how events that could have ended his career actually gave him a new lease on life.
I know, right? It's a testament to how resilient he is, his ability to connect with a certain part of America, and his mastery of the media.
He used it all to his advantage, painted himself as a victim of the deep state.
The outsider who's being targeted for speaking truth to power.
And it worked. He won a second term.
Unprecedented.
Totally. It was a clear sign that the movement he started wasn't going away.
And his second inauguration, it felt like a victory lap.
Total contrast to Biden's.
It felt like the start of something big.
He came back with a vengeance ready to reshape America.
But the question is, could he heal the country? Or would he just make the divisions worse?
I mean, it's crazy to think about everything that's happened.
I know, right?
It's like we watched a whole political era unfold right in front of us.
And so fast, too.
Right. It really shows you how quickly things can change in politics.
Especially now with social media and the news cycle being what it is.
247 nonstop. And at the center of it all is Donald Trump, this guy who seems to defy all expectations and rewrite the rules as he goes.
He's a master of reinvention, always changing his image, his message to fit the moment.
Yeah, you mentioned before that his story is this like clash between image and reality. So where do you see that playing out in his second term?
Well, I think he's got a whole new set of challenges now. The country's more divided than ever. The world is constantly changing. And climate change. I mean, that's a huge issue that needs some serious attention.
And let's not forget those criminal charges. Even though some were overturned, there's still this legal cloud hanging over him.
It's a tough spot to be in. On one hand, you have his supporters.
Who believe he's the only one who can fix things.
Exactly. They see him as a strong leader, a fighter who's not afraid to take on the establishment.
But then on the other hand, you've got his opponents, the media, the whole international community, scrutinizing his every move.
Yeah, it's a high-pressure environment, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles it.
Will he stick to the same policies, the same rhetoric, or will he try to tone things down, maybe reach across the aisle?
Who knows? Only time will tell.
But I think one thing's for sure, we can expect more surprises, more twists and turns.
More of that classic Trump unpredictability.
Exactly. Now, regardless of your political views, you gotta admit Trump is a fascinating character.
Oh, yeah.
He's challenged our assumptions, pushed the boundaries, and forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our society.
His rise to power says a lot about the anxieties and frustrations that many Americans are feeling. It's like a sign that something's broken in our political system.
That people are desperate for change.
Exactly, even if that change comes in the form of someone like Trump. So what can we learn from all of this? What are the key takeaways from our deep dive into the world of Donald Trump?
Yeah, what have we learned?
Well, for me, one of the biggest lessons is that we need to be more critical of the information we're consuming.
Especially in the age of social media, it's so easy to get trapped in these echo chambers.
Right, surrounded by people who just agree with you all the time.
We need to be willing to challenge our own beliefs, to seek out different perspectives, and to have respectful conversations with people who see things differently.
Exactly. We also need to be aware of the power of stories.
How stories shape the way we see the world.
Trump is a master storyteller. He's created this narrative that resonates with his supporters.
Even if that narrative isn't always true.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we need to be more discerning, to look beyond the surface and question the stories we're being told.
So another takeaway is that we need to find a way to bridge these divides.
Yeah, the polarization is out of control. It's eroding trust in our institutions, making it harder to solve problems, and threatening our democracy.
It's a tough challenge, but if we want a better future, we got to find a way to come together.
Absolutely. Ultimately, Trump's story is a cautionary tale. It reminds us that democracy is fragile.
That we need to be vigilant.
And engaged. That we need to participate, hold our leaders accountable, and work towards a better future.
Well said. It's been a wild ride exploring the life and times of Donald Trump.
It really has.
We've covered everything from his childhood to his businesses, from reality TV to the presidency.
We've seen his highs and lows.
His moments of brilliance and his moments of, well, recklessness.
He's inspired millions and alienated millions more.
His story is a reflection of just how complex and contradictory our times are.
It's a story that's still unfolding, and one that we can't ignore.
So what do you think his legacy will be?
That's the big question, isn't it? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, he's changed America, and his impact will be felt for generations.
So on that note, we'll leave you with this thought, no matter what you think of Donald Trump. His story is a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of this country.
We need to engage, think critically, and work together to build a better tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Donald Trump. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.